intelligent media for the politically aware.
Welcome to Sacred Matrix, a divine paradigm of love and universal consciousness, with your host, Janet Kira Lesson and Dr. Sasha Lesson.
Together, we transform the world.
And now, here are your hosts, Janet Kira and Dr. Sasha Lesson.
Experiences in the secret space programs. First, as a precog in Peru, he is used as a psychic resource for drug couriers. Later, he is taken as a child slave and for the elite's desires in a way that's reminiscent of Pizzagate. He finds himself on Mars for a while, only to be reassigned as a slave worker on a Dark Fleet merchant's ship. And that's just the beginning. We're going to have him tell us his full story. Dr. Lesson, what would you like to say?
All the years we've been talking to a number of people that have been in the secret space program, have directly experienced the slavery conditions and been on Mars. And all of this is coalescing. The different witnesses, although they were in different parts of Mars and so forth, when you start putting it all together, you see there's a preponderance of actual witnesses, and we're really excited to have you as a direct witness to all these things.
Thank you.
And thank you. Welcome, Tony.
Hello, thanks for having me. I don't know what time it is for everybody, but good evening, everybody.
Well, for me, it's only 2 o'clock in the afternoon because we're in Hawaii, and I think Thomas, you're what, on Central Zone?
I'm in Eastern.
Oh, you're Eastern.
Yeah.
So you're getting both sides, and then you're in the middle somewhere. Yeah. So, but we're very excited to have you here, and we're super interested in your story. And I didn't have a very long bio for you, but how about you start wherever it works for you, and tell us how you got into this. What happened?
Sure.
In a way that's logical for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
go ahead.
The thing I get asked about the most is how I remembered it all. I think, I like to tell people what happened to me. Sadly, I don't think is very uncommon. I think what's uncommon is that I remembered it. And it was somewhere around May of 2015. I went in for an MRI scan, and I was coincidentally, I was still going through the Randy Kramer videos a week later, and I had always had the memories. I had always had flashes of memories that were not like dreams, that, you know what I mean, but I just dismissed them as dreams because I thought when in the memory I had a history. I remembered standing on a ship and then having a history in the memory, and so it didn't make sense because I also lived a normal life as a kid, in southern Michigan. So I didn't have the chronological, the time travel component, the 20 and back technology part of it. I didn't really put that together. I thought that I had been a victim of an alien abduction and that they put me right back. They did an experiment on me and put me right back. And then I also had some weird memories of being on a spaceship. So I just dismissed them as dreams, And then so when I got, it's debatable if the MRI knocked it loose, if that was just a coincidence, but it was in the same 2-week time frame. And huge chunks of memories came back. Once I accepted the fact that, oh my God, that happened, once I accepted the fact that I could have been gone for 20 years and back, huge chunks of memories came. And it was disorienting. I'll be honest, it was hard to deal with in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened was in the beginning, I was about 1981, and I was just a kid in 4th grade. And I was in a talented and gifted program, like the top 5% of the kids of the school met once a week in the library. And one of the kids in there said that, you know, his dad, he said it just like this. He said, my dad's an Illuminati. What does your dad do? And we just did, we were kids, you know, like for a pecking order. So I didn't not like him. We just didn't get along because we both were trying to be the alpha male kid in the class, you know. And he hated me for after that. And then later that year, it was the science fair happened, and his dad came in and was a judge for the science fair. And I remember our teacher saying that he had the most credentials she ever saw, the most educated person she had ever met was him. And I walked by them in the cafeteria setting up our science fair project, and he said, "Dad, that's that boy I told you about that ruined my confidence." And they had some weird conversation. He said he doesn't deserve all that, but they had a conversation about me. And it was a day or two later. It might have been that same night I was taken. I woke up. It was a UFO abduction experience. You know, I woke up with a gray in my face in my bedroom, and they took me somewhere. They took me to a base somewhere, and I did. They did some experiments on me, or, you know, like some tests on me to see. They said if they wanted to see if I had the right genetics for what they wanted to do, and I began what was basically a 20 and back service, and I did 6 years, maybe 6 or 7 years on the Earth. And then,
Tony, did you agree to this service? Do you remember if you consented?
I did consent, but here's the thing: I didn't realize what it was going to be. They said his exact words to me was a short. There was a gray there, and there was a short reptile, like a 3 foot tall reptile, and he was like moved me around. He was strong. And so he moved me around if I was out or anything. Like, that's what he was there for. And they said, go ahead and ask him. And he said, they explained it to me. And, you know, I was a 9-year-old kid, and I thought I was in first contact situation. I thought that aliens had landed and that they were going to contact us, and they took me up to, you know what I mean? Like, I thought it was first contact. I was so happy. You know, I said, I knew you guys, I knew you were real. I knew extraterrestrials were real. And this is going to make such a big difference for the world to know about you guys. I'm so happy, you know. And I was kind of, naive to what was going on. So, but then he did ask me, he said, his exact words were, we want to borrow your consciousness. And we want you to go and work for us for 20 years. And I said, I can't be away from my parents that long. I got a family. And then he explained that you're going to go back in time, and you're going to go right back just a few minutes later. It's going to be like nothing happened, but you'll have 20 years of experience. You know, he said, it's really a great deal for you. We just want to borrow you. And so I said, sure. You know, like I said, I thought I was in a first contact experience.
Yeah.
Wow.
I wanted to help. I wanted to be,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I wanted to put a good, I thought I was some kind of ambassador at the time. You know, I was a kid.
Of course.
And so I did. And it was the experience that began after I consented was that it was just like the fire in the sky incident, the Travis Walton. It was the same exact procedure in that movie where they put me on a table and put a rubber sheet over me, and the table sucked it tight. And then he cut open around my mouth so I could breathe, and he cut open around my right eye, and a needle went in, went in behind me, and it felt like I got sucked out of my body. It was like a strange. And then I woke up in a hospital with humans around me, and getting a medical exam, and I had no memory of my life that I had left. I was blank slated at that point. And
wow.
Began the service, and I went through this was in, I found the place. It was near China Lake. It was the Inyokern Air Base that they had, I guess, rented like little portables. And it was a hospital kind of environment, and there was maybe a dozen other kids there about my age, same age. And we went through a classical MK Ultra traumatic mind control program where we had helmets put on our head and shocks that shocked us from one side to the other through our head, and watched movies, really, really sick and demented movies that with heavy subliminal messages, and given drugs. And they incrementally tortured us over time, you know, as the program went on. I lost track of how long it really was, the process, but it was a few months. And then from there,
did some of the children die?
I'm unaware if any of them died or not. What happened toward the end is that They did some experiments to us, and he would always call us in his office at the end of the day and ask us questions about, so, what did you think of the movie today, or what do he tested us at the end of the day each day. And he called me in and he said, congratulations, you qualified for the Theta program. And I didn't think any of you guys had it in you, but a few of you did. So we were split off at that point from the other kids. There was only maybe five or six of us that went into the Theta side of it. The other kids went into a different, they went somewhere else at that point. So I don't know.
Did they call you by name, or some kids get called by a number? Did they call you by name or a number?
It was a number, and my name changed through the whole experience many times. Every time I got taken somewhere else, they gave me a different name. So I never knew my name. I ended up being called Jerry at the end. They called me David. I had a few names. I think there was a number involved in like a nickname through that program, but it's kind of a vague, it's kind of sketchy, There's a lot of things, there's a lot of things I don't remember. There's a lot of small details that just weren't important to me at the time. Everybody thinks that being in space, first thing you would do is learn how to build a spaceship, but it's kind of like, do you know how to build your car? Or, you know what I mean? You don't. You just get in the car and drive it, and that's kind of like the same experience.
Tony, what I sense happening right now is, yes, you're telling the story, and as you've told it before, every time you tell it, you remember a little bit more. You lift the film off of it a little bit more. So telling it is really, I think, really great, because you're reaccessing it.
It is. It's really good therapy to talk about it. It has been, because it was hard to deal with. And also, I've been fortunate enough to have some people that are artists reach out to me and work for me pro bono, because I don't have the money to throw at it. And working with an artist to draw a picture up and actually see things. Some of the pictures come out and they're not much to look at for the everyday viewer, but they mean a lot to me for times, for things I went through. And so that's also been a really good memory tool, as well as a therapy for dealing with it. Just having, or just myself sketching it out and actually physically looking at it,
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
I do remember quite more. Not the big chunk. Like I said, it was the first 2 months. I had chunks and chunks of memories come. Once you remember one thing, it's like a keystone memory.
Yeah.
More to come. And so the first few months, I really remembered a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And it slowed down.
Just to let you know, Tony, that Sasha and I are both hypnotherapists. So we've worked with many, many people to help them recall their memories and heal and grow from it. So we have that awareness and sophistication. So just say it like it is, and be aware that we understand what's going on. We understand how the memories get segmented and kind of like the Russian dolls. They're one on top of the other, and they're deeper and deeper. So
and also, it's the confusion period you talk about is the, because they come tumbling out, and so when you think, you have to reflect on them a little, and they'll fall into order. That's what you're calling confusion is a necessary part of the process too.
Sure. Well, and at the same time, I have remembered a lot. So, it has been. And in the beginning, I just wanted some therapy. I didn't know where to turn. This isn't something that happens every day to be people. You know what I mean? I just was in the middle of my life being normal, and all of a sudden remembered all this stuff. I just wanted someone to talk to. And I reached out to a few researchers that vetted me. That went through things that I said and vetted me about it. And I got talked into the first interview. Well, not talked into it, but asked to do a first interview. So I did. I agreed to do some interviews, and things have changed a lot. A lot of people have reached out to me since then. After hearing about it, apparently I'm not the only one. In fact, when I say a lot of people, I mean, a few hundred, 200 or 300 people have reached out to me that have similar memories.
Yes, we've been getting lots and lots of reports too. Absolutely.
So you were taken to another place, the Theta program.
From the Theta program, and there, I'm still in Southern California, near China Lake. We went through that, and that was like, by the time we were on the Theta thing, that we were very sleep deprived as well. We didn't sleep. We weren't allowed to sleep. There was a buzzer that went off every few minutes. every 10 or 15 minutes, a buzzer would go off and wake us up. And so we went for weeks like that. And that time was, I kind of lost track of the time because of that. But we were being given some form of drugs and being taught how to astral project and with the remote view thing, like a few classes of that, techniques of that. And I guess what they settled on that I was useful at was there was a way that they would give me an IV in my arm. There was a drug they'd give me, and I would go unconscious. And apparently, while I was unconscious, I was either channeling or I was very intuitive to where they could ask me questions and things. And from there, we went over to the China Lake facility, and we got in with some looked like Air Force personnel, and maybe 4 kids, myself and 3 others. And we were put on a train, an underground train that went really fast, and I ended up in Helena, Montana, or near Helena, Montana, where a girl, the wife of a billionaire that I guess owned me. I was privately owned at that point.
Wow.
And she picked me up and drove me to Seattle. That's where they lived. They had a house in Seattle, near Seattle. And I went there, and he was a practicing Satanist. And I was there for a couple of days, and then he showed up, and then they had a satanic child sacrifice, ritual human sacrifice. And it was myself and 2 other kids were there. They showed up with him. We were in a hospital, like the hospital gown that you wear, and they gave us all IVs, and we sat outside, and then they did we were outside of like a living room downstairs with sliding doors, pocket doors, and the other 2 kids went in first, and then they brought me in. I had an IV on a roller, on the thing, and walked in there, and there was a dead child on the altar that was cut open, and he did a ritual human sacrifice there, and he was very matter of fact about it. He explained what was going on, and we had to take part in that. It was like a communion. You had to eat some and drink some, and he said and I didn't want to. And he said, you can be right up there next to him. He said, if you're not going to do this, then you're going to go right up there next to him. And the girl that was there, like my counterpart, she said, just do it. She said, I did it. Nothing bad happened. Just do it. Don't worry about it. Because I wasn't gonna. I was very spooked by a dead body at that point. But that happened, and then a couple days later, I was shipped off to Peru. After that happened, I was shipped off to Peru, and at that point, I guess they had lost a plane, had crashed, and they were loads of cocaine going from Porto to Huantansuyo, Peru to Santa Marta, Colombia, and it was about once a month or so. There were boats that would bring the drugs down the river, a little at a time, and it would pile up in a warehouse, and when they had a plane load ready, then there was a plane that would go. And I guess they lost a plane in bad weather or something, so they paid for me to be there. And there was one guy in the town that could speak English. He was he was in his early 20s, and he didn't want the job, but he was the only one that could speak English, and I spoke English. So he was my handler for that time. And I was there for maybe 3 years, 2.5 years doing that.
What was your job? I didn't understand. What were you doing there?
So they would load the plane up, and I would get on the plane, and it had like a cot, like the chairs that folded down were a cot. It was a C-46 Commando cargo plane. Mm-hmm. And we would fly over the state of Acre. We would fly up over the forest. I'd watch us take off and look outside. And then about maybe an hour, half hour into the flight, he would give me the IV in my arm, and I would go under. And I was like a canary in the coal mine. I was a warning system if there was going to be bad weather or police or anything that would jeopardize. And the first flight, I guess it didn't work. And so they were skeptical. They didn't believe it. The people that ran the operation, there was a guy in charge, and he had to pay. I guess he paid a lot of money for me to do this. And the very first time it didn't work. Like I said, just gibberish, And so they said it was they contacted it. He told me, he said it was they thought it was the electromagnetic stuff from the instruments on the plane. So they sent down a silver blanket and wrapped me in a silver blanket for the next flight. And when I woke up, so I would wake up and feel sick, very sick from what happened. And the next flight, they were like, "You better do something, or they're gonna get rid of you. You're gonna die." So he gave me the IV, and I passed out. I went unconscious. And when I woke back up, he was in shock about the things I said. He said that I was freakishly accurate in things that I was saying, and he I don't know what I said, but he said he was talking to his dead grandmother, had contacted him and was speaking in Spanish. While I was under that, I was speaking another language fluently, and he said it was his grandmother, and he said that I warned him about all kinds of stuff. He said not only was I saying things that mattered to the flight, but personal things about people that lived in the town. He was getting information about personal stuff.
Wow.
So he freaked out, and after that, after 2 or 3 missions like that, they started to have questions ready for me, and I became very valuable to them. And so,
like oracle. You're an oracle for them.
I was an oracle, exactly. Yep.
Do you know what kind of drugs they were giving you?
No, I wasn't allowed to eat sugar, and for some reason that made it more dangerous for me to take it, and it was like close to death. And later on, toward the end, like right when I started to hit puberty, I lost the ability, and I started to get worse and worse. Every time, like I was sick, I'd be sick the next day when I woke up. I would feel very sick, and toward the end, I would stay sick almost the whole month. It got longer and longer. The longer I did it, every month I got a little bit more. I was still a little more sick when I came back to. And so toward the end, I couldn't do it anymore. I basically lost the ability, and they shipped me back to Seattle to that same house, and I lived there for another I want to say 2.5 years, 3 summers. For 3 summers, I lived there, and that was it was like, and by then they had other boys living there. They had 6 or 7 other boys, and they came and went. There would be new boys, and boys would go, and that was a standard pedo gate thing. It's hard to talk about. But that's basically it. We were sex slaves for parties that they threw.
Wow.
And that lasted until I was probably 13 to 16, right in there. And what happened there was every day we got up and did calisthenics, and they gave us some pills. I don't know, vitamins or something. They gave us a cup of pills to take every morning, and they changed them. And I was allergic to one of them, to something that they gave us, and they wouldn't change it. So they said, "You're going to the military." I was basically sold to the military, or leased, or however that. I was a piece of equipment.
Right.
And
wow. So which branch of the military were you sold to?
Well, I went to the moon. So I went to the trapezoid base on the moon, and was trained for some of those programs. So from there, I went to Mars Colony Corp, and it was we were part of a program. They were trying to have, it was like a force multiplier experiment. They wanted I guess the soldiers were expensive, and they wanted to have a fighting force that would be quicker and cheaper to put more boots on the ground. So they wanted to see if they could use guys like me.
We skipped the moon, Janet.
What's that?
We got to go back to the moon to follow your narrative.
Sure.
Before you jumped to Mars, you went to the moon. So
what did you do on the moon?
Let us see it through your eyes. What was that?
Well, I flew. Went to the moon, and we went to the trapezoid base, and it looks just very much like a government building on the inside. It was concrete with shiny waxed shiny floors, and it had windows and normal doors in it, and there were grays there. There were tall blonde military officers there that were in charge, and there were taller grays there. And I was wheeled around on a gurney, basically from one surgery to another. I went through a series of surgeries that I was put through, and then it was another thing. It was kind of the same technique as the MK Ultra programming, but different. They would give us a drug and then plug you into a screen, and you'd watch movies. And the movies were about, I wasn't even trained per se to fight or to be, it's not like they gave me a gun and I had target practice to be a better shot. The movies were all about fight or flight response. They wanted me to always just choose a fight response rather than a flight response. And it was all about how you responded in an emergency. And they were moving, and it was like hours and hours of these movies. And
what surgeries, what kind of surgery did they do?
Yeah, well, I get asked that a lot, and it's not like they didn't tell me, you know what I mean, what was going on.
Okay.
I would go into a surgery, painful sometimes.
You're fading in and out. Hold the mic right by your mouth.
Get closer to the mic, yeah.
Okay, is that better?
Okay, so.
Yeah. That's much better.
So they didn't say what surgeries. Did you notice any physical changes after the surgery or changes within yourself?
No. There was one time I went into a surgery and then I got out and then they put me in a machine that was like tested my arms, like tested movement. It was a machine that moved my arms and legs. Uh-huh. And I guess it tested the range of movement and how strong I was. It was like a machine. And that was posed after a surgery, so I don't know if they did something to me at that point. Like I said, it was kind of a horrible experience. So I don't remember.
Right.
It was painful.
Do you know how long you were there?
A couple weeks at that point. And I remember the room I slept in. It was a small room, and it had just a blanket and a pillow on the floor. And that's where I was sleeping. They put me back in there every day. And sometimes they gave me there.
And the other thing that's missing for me is how you moved from Earth to Moon and Moon to Mars. How did you do that?
Well, you know what? I didn't get to see too much of the craft from the outside of it, but it was like being in an airplane. It was like a TR-3B type craft, and imagine in an airplane with the rows of seats, but the rows were 20 seats wide. It was a very wide room, and then every so often, every 15 feet, there was a chrome pole that went from the floor to the ceiling, so you could get around if there was no gravity, and you were not seat belted. You could get to one of those poles pretty easy and get yourself oriented. But it said Douglas on the seat. It said Douglas Aircraft like you sat in the seat. The seat in front of you had an insignia that said Douglas. But
wow. Did they have bathrooms like they have on airplanes?
Yep. It was just like an airplane on the inside. And the time that I went, when we flew from the moon to Mars, there wasn't many people on board. There was myself and maybe a dozen kids sitting on the other side of it, and there was a couple officer guys that sat over in my area. It wasn't ever full of people when I flew on it. It was a pretty big area, that we went in. And then there was always an umbilical when it landed that came. So you walk through just like when you get off an airplane, that umbilical that reaches out to it, and you walk through that hallway. There was one of those, but they were always pressurized. There was always sealed up. It's not like you could see outside or anything.
Were you able to look into the steering, the cockpit area? Did you see it?
You couldn't see the front, at all. The pilot did come when we did go to the moon the second time. The pilot did come over the radio and explain. We flew over one base and he pointed it out, and the people on the right hand side of the craft, the wall turned transparent, and he kind of oriented it where they could see the base. I couldn't see it. And when we got over to the other one, the trapezoid one, I did get to look at it. It looks like the Pentagon, but like the same building structure as the Pentagon, but shaped as a trapezoid, like a square on the top and bottom, like a triangle.
Okay, so you get off, you go through this ramp, which is pressurized, and what's there? Are there people, aliens? What did you get into?
I was going to say, how many people were on the craft the first time you went to the moon? You said there were 20 seats across.
It wasn't that many, 20 or 30 people tops. It looked like it could hold 100 people in just the one room that I was at, the one section that I was in. So it wasn't very full at all.
Okay, could hold 100. Okay, now, so now you're getting off the craft. What's the first thing you see?
I'm trying to think of what time,
Um,
when we went back, it was just military guys, and you walked out into a room, and I'm kind of remembering this live right now. But
Yeah,
you
good,
walked
good.
into an area, and they pulled me with them and a couple other guys, and there were hallways, and there were graves there. There were graves there, and we went with them.
Uh-huh.
We were marching single file line at that point. When we were finished with the surgeries and with the program, we're looking at those movies. When we were finished, they flew us over to the other base. And I remember the biggest difference to me was there was a hangar that you went in, and when the ship parked, I caught a glimpse outside, and the other base, which I believe was the LOC, the Lunar Operations Command, United States one, or whoever is right in charge of it. And the thing I remember is that the hangar area was lit up, and it was much bigger, and there was more lights there. The other one, the trapezoid base, when you looked out, when you got off there and looked out the window, it was dark. The hangar, all the ships and everything, there was no really lights on, very little light, and it looked smaller. But we went there, and they tested us. They had programmed us to basically be suicide bombers, to be, like I said, to not chicken out, to have a fight response instead of a flight response.
Wow.
They marched us single file, and it was myself and probably there was a dozen of us. It was 12 guys like me. We were all the same age. They went through the same programming as I did, and we had just met each other that time. And they marched us single file line through a bunch of hallways with doors with no windows. It was like stuffy. And we marched for a ways and took an elevator down, then marched some more. And we came to a door, and they lined us all up. We had to stand at attention. And there was a Marine guy, like an officer, like a drill sergeant, the way he talked to us and everything. And we got handed a canister that looked like a shaving cream can with a button on top of it. And they said, he said, when you walk through that door, that will arm, and you're going to have a live grenade. And as soon as you press the button, there'll be no delay. It will explode. And if you see anything coming at you, you might do yourself and your friends a favor and run at it and just blow it up and take yourself with it and save their lives while you're doing it. That's kind of, in a nutshell, that's what they told us to do. So then we went in, and there was a few inches of sand, like a beach sand, on the floor, and it was a big arena, and there were bright lights coming down from the top. So there was spectators above us, and there was a chain link fence that was hanging up above that. So it looked like the area that they could spectate from had a fence that could drop down and protect them in case anything could fly up there.
Uh-huh.
And it was just your standard chain link fence. It wasn't anything fancy. But then, so they put all 12 of us in there, and we sat there a minute, and the door on the other end of the room opened. It was a gigantic insect that came in. And I've had some artist drawings that I can send you. It was a gigantic insect, and it made weird noises, and then when it moved, it would get silent and move towards us and sit there, and then it would make noises to see if it scared us. And we were scared. I mean, we were all we huddled together, and we were trying to push each other to the front of the huddle. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I got towards the front, and it got closer to us, and it was just an absolute hideous looking bug. It had to be 400 pounds. It was a big, giant thing. And it got closer to us, and one of the kids just ran at it and detonated, and he blew himself in half, and he blew the head of the thing apart. And it dropped.
Wow.
And it dropped dead, and he blew into. He held he held the grenade like a football and ran at it right onto its head and detonated. And right there at his hips, he blew in his legs and his hips went one way, and his torso went the other. And right then, that same door we came through opened back up, and a bunch of people in lab coats ran over to him. And I guess he lived. They were able to fix him, is what we heard. And took him out.
Passed the
They're excited. It was a success. What they were trying to experiment with, they said was a success. So they were thrilled. And we went back in. We all got another round of medical examinations, and we went to sleep. And it was the next morning that we flew to Mars on the same craft.
Wow.
Wow, that's amazing. So was he? Well, you don't know what happened to him, but did he get like
He
a
came,
special honors?
yeah, he was. I think he came with us, but he didn't go to the same post that I did. I think he did.
He returned. He returned then to the ship that went on.
Yeah, he was fixed up the next day.
He saw him. Oh wow!
And but he didn't go with me to where I went. When we got to Mars, so the ship I think kind of jumped instantly there. I don't think it was a long flight at all, but we had to wait in orbit around Mars to get clearance, like a clearance to land. So we were in orbit like an hour and a half to 2 hours. They turned off the gravity and let the kids. They said if you want to take off your seatbelt and play around and experience zero gravity, you can. And I chickened out, and that was the last time I ever had an opportunity for zero grav. And I was bummed. I regretted that. I remember regretting that for a long time. But that happened, and then we landed. And as soon as I landed, there was a hangar there, and it was small. It was a smaller hangar with a shorter roof. And as soon as I got off that ship, I got on another small one myself, and like I said, it was a dozen of us at a time. And we flew on a different ship to a smaller forward base somewhere. And Mars was bewildering to me. I had no idea where I was ever. But we went to a smaller base, and it was a place it was an underground base, and it was meant for 150, maybe 200 people. It was a bigger place, but there was only 30 or 40 people there. They were Marines, and there were officers there. They were American troops. The rest of it was abandoned, and they set us up to have we slept in a cot in an office cubicle. It was an area that was office cubicles, and they converted it for us to sleep. We didn't give. And then across the hall we had a bathroom, like a public bathroom that we could use.
What was your mission?
Well, what happened was we were there, and they were waiting for. We were there a week or two, and nothing happened. There was no briefing or anything. We just kind of woke up, and they'd feed us, and we hung out in our area. Every now and then they'd give us stuff to do, like sweep up or clean stuff. But what ended up happening was they would put us in groups of six, two groups of threes, and we would go out hiking, and there would be two soldiers in armor that would go with us.
Uh-oh, where are you?
Sorry. And I did three.
Okay.
I did 3 missions like that. The first one, we went out and we did a hike. They gave us environmental suits, like bright. They were all white. It was a white suit, and it was like a rubbery, like a very tough, like a rubber.
Uh-huh.
And we had a small backpack, and we had a small gun that they gave us, a rail gun that was attached to the arm of the suit, so you couldn't drop it. It was actually part of the suit. And we hiked. We'd go out and hike maybe 3 or 4 miles, and then hike back. And the first time they were happy. I guess nothing happened, but they were happy. It was a successful mission. And then the other guys would go out the next day, and then I would go out. We were in a rotation. The next time we went out, came back. Go ahead. Oh,
we're listening. Go ahead. You're in a rotation.
So the second.
So you're going out again.
The second time we went hiking, we went on a hike, and when we came back, there were cheers. Everybody was happy. So something happened that I didn't witness. It was near us, or you know what I mean? Like something happened near us. They didn't ever debrief us about it. We were kept in the dark about a lot of things. But we did that mission. We came back, and they were all high-fiving and excited about the program. They had high hopes for everything. And then the third mission we went out was later in the day. And they said possibly this time you could see a sunset, a purple sunset, when we were leaving, when we were going out. The soldiers had a huge body armor that they wore, and they could actually run. They were negative. They were the same buoyancy there in the gravity on Mars as they were here, because their armor weighed them down. So they were able to run normally and walk around normally because of their armor. But ours was just an environmental suit, so we were still quite a bit lighter on the surface of Mars. the guys that were, I guess we were bait. You know what I mean? The guys
gosh.
the environment suit.
Bait.
So we couldn't run very well. It turned into like a hop, like a gallop. You would run, and so you could go pretty fast, but it was when we wanted to go top speed, when we wanted to run, it was difficult for us. We weren't weighed down. They said at the rate it was going, if we were to kept having successful missions, we were going to get armored suits eventually. What they told us. So anyhow,
so they never told you what you might encounter.
Well, wait. Maybe you're gonna counter him.
Go ahead.
We got out and we started getting away from the soldiers. They were up on like a mountain ridge following us, and we were starting to get away from them. And we split up from each other. 3 of the guys wanted to go stay closer to the ridge, and myself and 2 others wanted to stay with the route that we were told. They gave us a map and a route to go, So we said, well, no, we were ordered to go this way, so let's go this way. And 3 of the guys said, no, we're not getting out of range of them. So we split off. And bad weather blew in. It got really dark and cloudy, and we could hear the bugs behind us coming up behind us. We could hear them, and so we started running, and they caught up to us, and they were much faster than us. I mean, they were very, very fast. And there were 3 or 4 different types of bugs. There were smaller ones that looked like I don't want to say ladybug, but they were kind of like a ladybug, like maybe 3 feet long. And then there were bigger ones that were like a spider they jumped really far, and they had like a vertical head that went straight up and down with pinchers. And then there was one as well. But I remember we were jumping from over dunes. It was dunes. We were jumping from the top of the dunes, to the next ones to try to go fast. And I was in mid jump when one tackled me, and it bit my arm off. It bit my right arm off, and the gun and the arm were gone. And it
my gosh!
Stood on me. I landed on the dune, and it stood on me. And the other 2 guys were in front of me, and they were over a dune, and I could see the other little bugs and another spider one go over the dune, and I could hear them being killed. And I sat there a minute, and I just said, it held me down, face down into the ground, onto the dirt, and I had my arm cut off, so I was kind of in shock, And then it lifted me up, and a mantid walked up, and I've got a good artist representation of this one as well. And the bug pictures that I've had, I had a really good artist work with me, artofcon.com. He's a really, really talented artist, and I'll send these pictures to you. But
I'd love to see it. Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
bounced these off. So I emailed when I got these pictures done, these artist representation of the bugs I experienced. I sent them to Randy Kramer, and he concurred. He said, "Yep, he said, thanks a lot for thanks for the nightmares." Is what he wrote me back. But he said that he concurred and he confirmed that is pretty much how the bugs looked.
You got one of the mantoid too?
Yeah, you're saying the bug had you face down and then lifted you up.
It lifted me up, and then a mantid walked toward me. And when it got up on me, it had antennas. And when it got close to me, both antennas pointed towards me, And I just went into I was sitting there begging, please don't kill me. I was saying, please don't kill me. Please don't kill me. I don't want to die. Please. I was begging for my life. And I went into a dream. It was like I went into it. It was like I was still conscious, but I wasn't looking out my eyes anymore. I was in a dream state. And it was looking through my life. It was taking me to places. Like I went back to China Lake and stood in that we were in that room in China Lake, and it was empty. There was nothing there. And he was describing what he was seeing to someone else.
Wow.
I went to the moon, and then it looked there. Then I went to the house on Seattle, it looked there. And he communicated with me. He said, look, I don't want to kill you, but we want to find out what's going on. And he's like, if I'm ordered to, he was very respectful when he communicated to me. He said, I don't want to kill you, but if I'm ordered to, I'm going to have to. He's like, just so you know, it's not up to me, but I'll put in a good word. Let's see if we can't get you. Let's see if we can't make it to where we can just let you go. He was kind of reassuring. He was very respectful. I remember that.
Wow.
A lot of respectful. I wasn't spoken to respectfully during that time. what I mean?
So how did you know it was a he, and was this telepathic?
It was
or some.
it was completely. I was completely in a dream state, so it was beyond telepathic. You know what I mean? Like I was completely.
Right.
I was along for the ride. So he looked at all the places I'd been through, and he looked at the base. We stood there, and it was like again, it was empty in my dream, and it was me and him standing there, and he was describing it to somebody else, to something else, and then he took me to the house, my original house that I grew up in, where I was taken from, that I had no memories of. It was the living room of where I grew up, the house, you know, where I lived as a kid. He said, "This is who you really are." And then I woke up.
Wow.
I woke up and I was again felt the pain of my arm being gone, and I was like, "So am I? Please don't kill me." I think I kept on with that. Please don't kill me. And it let me go. It stood me up. I was standing, and they let me go. And they all moved together. They all kind of lined up together at the same time. And then the little ones were communicating with it. Like they looked like they had a conversation. And the little ones communicated like they were mad, or you know, they were like chirping or something. And he looked at me and he looked down at it, and one of the little ones came and it bit my foot off. I guess it was like it wanted to practice or something. I don't know what that was about, but it bit my right foot off under the ankle. And they left, and then they just tore out of there. And so I fell down on the ground. And we were each given, I guess the Marine armor has auto tourniquet technology. So that if one of the Marines gets an arm severed, there's a tourniquet inside the suit that automatically clamps down. You know what I mean? And so, but we weren't.
Yes, you don't.
What's that?
Oh, so you won't bleed out. I understand.
Right. So we didn't have those. We had an auto tourniquet that was, we each had one, and it looked like, it was a little white box with a line, with a cord around one side of it, and you pull the cord out and put it over you and hit the button, and it would tourniquet, you know, automatically. So I put that on my arm, and then I crawled over the dune to what was left of the other guys, and I got one tourniquet, and I put that around my leg, and I started trying to crawl back in the direction I came. And the two soldiers caught up with me and carried me, but one of them carried me all the way back to the base.
Wow.
And I kept trying to lose consciousness. I remember he was telling me, don't go. They gave me some injections. There was some kind of drug they gave, and they wore off after not long, only a couple, 5 minutes or something. They wore off, but you felt no pain for a minute, and my heart rate increased. You know what I mean? Like you felt it was a stim of some kind. But they gave me a couple of those. And they were taking them. They were out. They were worried that they were out of them. And so when we finally they were slapping me to keep me awake. He was slapping me and hitting me in the face. And he said, "You're going to see a purple sunset." And the weather was crappy, but I did get a glimpse at a purple sunset. I did. And,
we promised you the purple sunset.
Yeah, it was. I'd rather. Yeah, I would rather not. You know. But as soon as I saw the door, the base had a door. It was in a hill, and there was a door that went into the hill. And as soon as I saw the door, he let me go to sleep. And I passed out, and I woke up the next morning, and I had my arm and my foot back, good as new. I woke up in the morning, and they debriefed me. I sat in a hospital bed. There were a couple of guys. They asked me questions. They didn't ask me too much. It really wasn't very thorough.
Was the arm and the foot just identical, or how identical was it to the one you had just before?
They were exactly the same. They were like brand new. It was like it never happened.
Wow.
Did you have any scars on your original arm or foot, and they were missing from the new one?
No, I didn't. I remember looking at that, and I didn't. It was just like, it was as if it never happened. I didn't have any scars.
Oh, wow.
So
so was that considered a successful mission? Were they cheered, or were they?
Yeah.
They canceled it after that. They canceled the whole program. My mission was canceled. So we sat there for probably another 6 weeks at that base and did nothing. It was we did nothing. It was boring. and we got hazed. The soldiers hazed us, and then we were waiting for reassignment, and they took us to one of the bigger cities on Mars. We flew in a transport, and I think it was Ares Prime. When we got in from the hangar, there was it was like a geodesic dome, and it was underground. But it was glass. You could see the dirt on the other side of it. And there were palm trees. There was a water feature. It looked like a resort, like an atrium for a 4-star resort, like a hotel. And then at the very top of the dome, you could see sunlight coming in. Like the dirt was blowing around. So the whole dome was underground, and the very top few feet of it were sticking out of the ground. So you could see the dirt, but there was sunlight coming in through there. And then we went down. There was an officer there, and he handed us off to another officer. And we went in and started another. It was another round of the same thing. It was school. We took aptitude tests. There were tall grays that ran it. Every morning they woke us up. There was a human that woke me up in the morning and escorted me from my room to where the school was. And it was grays. They were great tall grays that ran it. And you sat down, and there was like a rest to set your chin. And you watched. They gave us, like there was a drug I think he gave us. And you watched movies, and you took a test at the end of it and answered them. And it took aptitude tests, and I made it for skilled labor. And I was trained to repair like pneumatic stuff on ships. I was trained to do ship repair at that point. Basically, what to do if there was a fire, or just how to operate certain tools. And I went through that training for a couple months. I think it was a month or two. And then I was shipped off to the Ceres colony from there.
To where?
The Ceres colony.
The Ceres colony. Okay.
And what happened was just one day we were done with the training, and they said the same guy came and got me. He took me somewhere different, and it was a train station inside the city, on Mars. And it was a train. So we loaded us up on the train. And it was packed. It was crowded. And, when it turned on, you could feel it lift up off the track. It didn't really roll, and it took off into a tunnel. And then there was a poof. There was a disorienting, like a poof, like a flash of light, and it was disorienting. I remember that. But then it started slowing down almost immediately after. So the whole ride wasn't but a 5 minutes, tops 2 minutes. It was a quick thing, and then it started slowing down. And when the doors opened, I was on Ceres. I was on the planet Ceres, the planetoid.
Wow.
And,
Wow.
Completely different. The dirt was gray instead of red. Everything was red dirt on Mars. It was gray, and it was constructed different. All the construction was different. It was older. Like you could tell, like there were things that were built there that were starting to rust. You could tell it was a much older building that you were in. And I got off, and they were Germans. It was a German breakaway colony.
Wow.
There was a German officer that got there that lined us all up, and I was when we got off the train, we walked a very short distance, and it was a giant, like a hangar, and there were hundreds of troops. There were soldiers there, and there was a guy on a podium talking in German to him. And he lined us up. He said, "You guys line up here." And they handed us a pamphlet with German writing on it. And they said, "You're going to take this pledge when they call on you. And if you don't want to, you can go over there and you can be shot. Is anybody going to be shot?" We all just sat there and did it. We did it. And then they took us. We got a medical exam. And then I went back to where I was going to live for the next 12 years. It was like a prison.
Wow.
You think about the inside of a prison, like one of the older ones, like Alcatraz. It was like that, but there was no doors or no bars on the door. They were just open room, like a 5x8 room, a cell with no door. So you could come and go out of your room all you wanted, but you had to check in and out. There was a locked door to get in and out, and there were people there. There were security there that you had to check out with, But it was basically just like a prison, and it was all guys. There were thousands of guys in there.
Was there ever any fun or friendship or
Oh, yeah, plenty. Yeah.
connection?
The guys
Tell us about that.
on the ship, my work day began. It was like Groundhog Day to me. What happened was, from there I took a train into a hangar area, and then I took an umbilical out to a ship, and I was only on the bottom section of it. Like we were on the bottom deck of a ship. It was like a submarine. It looked just like the inside of a submarine, and bigger room in the center of it with, and it was just 3 other guys like me. That we were slaves. We had slave collars on. I had a shock collar, and they could shock us from the bridge, of the ship. But we didn't do what we were told, or they wanted us to hurry up, and we didn't. They would shock us. And there was a screen, and it literally told you step by step what to do. Today you're going to do this, and if there was nothing broken, then we did maintenance. We oiled things and cleaned things, and it would tell you exactly your list of things to do for the day. It was always different.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent news story, and I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
Hey folks, Captain Nighthawk here. Do you have a favorite host? Well, imagine if you will having all the broadcast shows from 2013 to listen to anytime you want. Awesome deal, huh? Anyway, so stop by freedomslips.com and order the entire 2013 library of your favorite host for just $30. Not only do you help with the station funding to keep us on the air, you also help the host because they get half of the net on every order. Also, we have Revolution Radio's all-time favorite shows all on one disc. The details are really broad, so you'll have to visit the website and go look at the details yourself. It's, again, www.freedomslips.com/season2013.htm. And get your favorites. First come, first serve, 7 to 21 days for delivery. Thank you. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps, including me. Later.
We've got to stop them! They're going to kill us all!
Hello, my name is Mr. Rowe. I am the host of Reality Extraction on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I utilize logic, intellect, and magic to methodically autonomize, vivisect, analyze, examine, study, scrutinize, and extract an essence of reality from a fog of illusion and confusion. You can find me on Studio B every Thursday at 1700 hours Pacific Time. That's 8 p.m. Eastern. No topic taboo, no subject too strange. I strive to take a neutral standpoint during the dissection of the topic at hand. That's Reality Extraction with Mr. Rowe on Revolution Radio.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Most guys freeze. That's just a cerebral cortex looking for an answer it doesn't have.
See?
Even your brain knows you're screwed.
Your body's filling with adrenaline right now, whether you know it or not. Your heart's beating fast. It's getting a little harder to breathe. The neurobiological system is telling it to run, but your knees are too weak to move.
Fear is not real. The only place that fear can exist is in our thoughts of the future. It is a product of our imagination, causing us to fear things that do not at present and may not ever exist. That is near insanity. Do not misunderstand me. Danger is very real, but fear is a choice. We are all telling ourselves a story.
You're listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. 100% listener-supported radio. Reporting the danger, unafraid. Right here, where information never sleeps. Revolution Radio.
Welcome to Nightlight. Step away from the mainstream and gather around as we enlighten the world and our realities and travel this cosmic journey we call life. Join us as we share with you and provide that beacon that can guide us all to a better way. Explore with us as we examine a metaphysical montage of spiritual insights, covering everything from the mundane to the magical, UFOs to unicorns, and everything in between. This is a time of awakening, of sharing and evolving, of spreading our wings and soaring on the cosmic breath of creation. Come and join with other light-minded spirits as we weave our lights together to seek understanding, enlightenment, and, with a little luck, some wisdom. This is Nightlight, a reminder that you are never alone. And now, here is your host, the lovely, delightful, insightful, and all-around great gal, Ms. Barbara DeLong.
And I see a whole army of my countrymen here in defiance of tyranny. You've come to fight as free men. And free men you are. What will you do without freedom? Will you fight? We will run. And we will live. Aye. Fight and you may die. Run and you'll live. At least a while. And dying in your beds many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?
The future is uncertain. I know this. Death is inevitable. I know this. But one thing is certain. As free men, it is our right to live unencumbered and in peace. And those times are quickly drawing to an end. And in these times, peace is certainly an illusion. And as the chains grow tighter, our ability to slip those chains increase incrementally with every passing moment. Inaction is no longer an option. It's time to raise our voices like a cacophony of thunder and lightning and tell the masters no more. And this is Nighthawk, and I say, for myself, no more. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, because the freedom is slipping away. The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Aloha and welcome back to the Sacred Matrix on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. And you're here with Janet Kira Lesson and Dr. Sasha Alex Lesson, your host, with producer Thomas Becker, also known as Mad Painter, and our guest, Tony Rodrigues. But before we get back to our show, I'd like to remind everybody to please go over to the donation button on freedomslips.com and make your donation. Whatever you can afford, 5, 10, 15, 20, 100, we greatly appreciate. And a Mad Painter, Thomas, where are we?
We have 21.25 and we need 26.50. So
okay.
$500 or so off, a little more.
We'll meet our expenses. Great, great. Sash, what would you like to say before we get back to the show?
So we've been interviewing Tony Rodrigues, who's a direct eyewitness to mass kidnapping, murder, secret space program, a transporter jump room program between the moon and Mars, stuff that other witnesses have come forth to tell us about, and the picture is getting clearer and clearer, and Tony is remembering more and more, and we're going to continue his narrative now.
So you had the when we last spoke, you had the slave shock collars on, and there's a screen that told you step by step what you had to do each day.
Right, and
back to you, Tony.
That was basically my first post. It was ship repair and maintenance, and it was an older ship, like an antiquated spaceship. I never saw the outside of it. I never went upstairs on it. It was just the lower decks, and like I said, it was myself and 3 other guys. And sometimes one of them would go somewhere else. It'd be just 3 of us. But basically, it was Groundhog Day. A buzzer would go off in the morning. Everybody woke up in this prison area, and you had to take a shower and eat something. And then we rode trains to where the hangar was. And then I just went from the train to my own little umbilical, checked in, and went on to the ship. And then when I was done, we came back at the end of the day, and you rode a train back, and you had to shower to get back in. So it was like shower out and then shower in. So it was just like a prison experience, you know. But that was basically Groundhog Day, and every day something would happen. We'd go and we checked on. There was a monitor, and it looked like a McDonald's order monitor. You know the monitors they look at McDonald's for the orders.
Yeah.
To come back? It was just like that, and it would tell you exactly step by step how to. It would say, you know, we were person A, B, or C. Person A, go to the tool locker and take out this, and this, and you would grab it, and then it would come back. You go back to the screen, and then it would say, now go do this, and this, and this. It told you exactly what to do. It was the computer. It wasn't even a person. You know, it was just automated.
Gee, how did you stay sane? 12 years of this?
We goofed around. We goofed around. Those guys, we were, you know, it was kind of like, you know, we were friends with each other, but we were mean to each other too. You know what I mean? We were just guys. We were in a situation. So, but we did. There was humor. You know what I mean? We did goof around, and to be honest, it wasn't the best existence those years, but it was stable and it was easy. We did have easy days where, you know, there were things that we would do, and then they wouldn't pay attention. We wouldn't do it, you know. And then other times that they would pay attention. They needed something done in a hurry. If we didn't get it done, they'd shock us. And they shocked all of us. If one of us got in trouble, they shocked us all.
Group punishment. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Right, exactly. So you'd be less likely to mess up to hear it from the other guys, you know. But what happened was that ship slowly got worse and worse, and toward the end, we were doing major repairs every day, and it was an old ship. It was antiquated, and what happened was there was a valve that there was a giant, probably 24-inch pipe of a big pipe, and inside of it there was a valve that wouldn't close properly, and so they had us figure out a way to use the pipe. And we had things that were auto welders. We did welding, but we didn't have to. It was a collar that I put around the pipe, and then you put the fuel in it and a rod in it, and it did it by itself. It would cut the pipe, and I could set up a new pipe and put it on there, and it would weld it together perfectly. I was out of the equation. It was an automatic, and then it recharged. It was an electrical thing. You put it back in the tool crib, and it would recharge. They were auto welders we used. We used them quite a bit. And one of us figured out to attach, I think, 3 of the bigger auto welders together, and he figured out a way to cut that pipe open. And we could crawl up in it and just tap the valve, and it would close. It was just getting old. And it was one of those systems we couldn't really fix it without tearing out a bunch of other stuff. And it was an expensive fix. So for a couple months, we did that. Whenever they needed that valve closed, one of us had to crawl up in there and tap it. And one day, one of the guys didn't come. I forget the reason. He was sick or something bad happened to him. And so we were shorthanded, and a lot of things were breaking down, and they were radioing down to us to close that valve as soon as possible over the loudspeaker. And I radioed up. I'm by myself, but you'd need someone to pull you out of it. And the valve didn't close all the way. It was radioactive water, like steam that was going through. It was radioactive. And so I eventually, I radioed back and said, I can't do it. I need send somebody else here to help me out before, if I crawl up there, I'll get stuck up there and probably burn up. And so they radioed down again, close the valve. They were panicking. And so I eventually thought, they called it anti-telephoning, where if a mission went really bad, they could go back in time and not do the mission. If that makes sense.
Wow.
So they had a technique for that. So if we did missions that were dangerous, if they failed, they had a technique of anti-telephoning, calling back in time saying, don't do the mission, it failed. And it would scrub. And there were plenty of times we showed up in the morning and the mission scrubbed, and we turned around and went right back. And I just sat in my room all day for that reason. So we called it. So I thought, this mission is going to get anti-telephoned. So I'm just going to crawl up there anyway. It's not going to matter. It'll never happen, And so I crawled up in there, and I got the valve closed, and steam came through, and I was badly burnt. I was injured. Got stuck up in there, and it just cooked me. It was like hot steam came through. And I'm stuck in this pipe. So eventually we got back, and it wasn't much time, maybe 20 minutes I was stuck up there, but I was burnt pretty bad. And they pulled me out, and I remember the command guys were all down there. And there were German officers that were standing around me. And I was like disfigured, burnt. My face was burnt bad. My hand was burnt. I had my hand over my head when I crawled into it, so that was stuck up there. And they said if I wasn't a slave, that if I was one of their soldiers, that I would have earned a medal for what I had done. Wow. So that ship was, after that mission, it was decommissioned. And we got a bigger ship. We went on to one of the pumpkin seed ones described. It looked like a stealth ship with a pointy front end and a rounded back end with tapered off with a cargo bay, and it was a cargo ship. And I remember it was in dock. We worked on it. I showed up to work on the ship for months before it ever took off, and I got another round of schooling. I had been they fixed me of all the burns and everything that I went through. I went through a medical procedure and was good as new, pretty quick. And people ask me what happened there. I don't remember it either. That was one of those things. I was kind of out for that, but it was fixed at that point. I don't know.
So at some point they valued you, even though you were a slave.
Right. Well, this was my last 2 years. It was probably my last 2 years, and I was promoted. I went from being ship repair on that old ship to being a cargo engineer, and I was in charge. I had like 7 guys under me, 7 or 8 guys, and I had 2 cargo bays that I was in charge of. I was the cargo engineer. And it was a much better job. It was a much better job, and I actually got they after a few missions where they were successful and made money, they had like a profit sharing. And they all voted the guy. I sat in on the mission briefings in the morning with the command crew, and they voted and they gave me a check, a paycheck. It was something like $20 a week, of money. But that gave me train passes to go into town to be able to go and explore the colony. So I was able, for about 2 years, I was able to travel around in the Ceres colony corp. Inside. It's a big planet. It's 580 miles in diameter. It's not a big planet, but it's a big place. And they have trains in their little towns.
What was that like? What did you see?
Well, I'm currently working with some artists on there. What it was is the Germans had found construction there when they got there. It was an abandoned underground base that was already there, and they converted it, and they were mining new areas and building into it. And they were looking for caverns with water so that they could, a bigger cavern so they could build bigger areas. And whoever was there, whatever ET race, had tall, maybe 150, 200, 300 foot tall caverns that they had cut out. They were like a trapezoid shaped tunnel. And they would go for miles, and they would open up into bigger natural caverns that used to have water, big caverns. And the Germans built European looking towns in them.
Wow.
I mean, there was like, it looked like 1940s construction with European towns with columns and concrete. Everything was concrete with streets. And they had a red light district, and that's where I ended up going. My very first day traveling, one of the officers on the bridge said, "No, you need to go to you know what the red light district is?" I said, "No." He said, "You need to go there. Make sure you go there." So I traveled, and I went to a restaurant. I bought some real food. Up to that point, during my time, we always ate replicated food, which wasn't the best. And I went to a restaurant and had real food, and that was like half of my money for the week. And I took another.
What was the food? What did you get? What kind of food did they have?
It was like a chicken kebab. The one that I ate, it was like on a stick. It was like chicken. But I didn't know what I was doing. That was my first time in that. In those 20 years of that person, that was my first time ever really going to a restaurant, by myself. So that was the first time that I did anything by myself, really, in that whole time, where I had a day of freedom. I got lost, and I ended up in the red light district, and that's a whole.
So they have.
Did you find some comfort there?
I did. Well, I did. I did end up with a girlfriend that was there. There was a place. They were slaves as well. And what happened was I got beat up. And I got mugged, literally. And I was sitting there, and I thought I didn't have enough money to get back. And they said, "Look, you can go out as long as you want, as long as you report to your post in the morning." That was my condition. They said, if you can do anything you want as long as you report to your post and do your job. If you start to not do that, then you'll be killed. That was the threat from them. If you don't show up, you'll be killed. So that was very motivating. So
you got mugged.
I got mugged.
Who mugged you?
I had my money stolen, and I thought I wasn't going to get back. And I just sat there. I was looked out. I sat in the street, literally, and I was bleeding. And I just looked. I remember looking down, and I was in tears, and I started crying. I thought I was not going to make it back in time and die. And a girl came out, and she was a sex worker at a brothel there. And she came around and said, "Honey, are you okay? What's wrong with you?" And she took me in, and the manager of that place was an ET. He was like 9 feet tall. He had an elongated head. He had curly hair. He was terrifying looking, and he was telepathic. And he wouldn't talk to me directly, but she would go talk to him, and then he would tell her what to say and come back to me. And they tried to figure out where I was from. I said, I need to get back. If I don't show up to my post in the morning, I'm gonna be killed. So I need to get back. And they couldn't figure out where I went, where I belonged. And I said, I go to the hangar. And this is another thing. This was news to me at this time. I said, I just, can you tell me how to get back to the hangar, and I can take a train from there? And they said, well, there's more than one hangar. And I didn't know that. So eventually he called the police, and it was like your German Gestapo kind of police guy. Two guys showed up. And one look at me, they saw the insignia. I had an insignia on my shoulder, and I had like a jumpsuit that I wore. And when they saw that, they said, "Oh, he goes back here." They knew exactly where I went, and they stayed and had a drink and talked to the girls for a few minutes, and then left. And then the owner, it was like $2, $3. He loaned me money to get a train pass, and I said, "I promise I'll come back and pay it." And she said, he says, "There's no way in hell you're going to come back and pay this." He thought I was just going to take it and stiff him. And so I made it back that day. And when I got paid the next week, I went back there and paid him his money back. The same girl was there and at the same time. And what happened was, I guess during that week, there was a table that he couldn't see. He stayed in the same corner of the club area because it was a lower gravity setting, and he was from a lower gravity place. So he stayed in his corner behind. There was a little, he had like a desk that he stayed in, and there was less gravity there. So he stayed there, but he could see everywhere in the club except for the far right-hand corner of the table. And I guess one of the girls had been assaulted during that week. So he said that I could go there, I could stay there in the club without paying as long as I wanted until it filled up. And I, like, as a placeholder, so that nobody else would sit in that seat because he knew I was harmless. So I would go there on my days off. I could afford it a couple times a week, and I would go there and just sit there and have drink water. The girls were slaves too, so that we kind of had, stuff in common. And there were times when I would get there early in the morning sometimes. We did our missions on our ship. We would leave at 8 in the morning and get back at 8:05 in the morning. And we'd be gone 12 hours. The ship came back in time to the same time it left. So I had time to kill sometimes. There were times when we came back later in the afternoon. It just depended on what we did, where we were. But so I was there in the morning when there was nobody there, and there was always 3 girls working. So they would sit around and talk. We would talk, and I became good friends with them, and I became involved. I fell in love with one of the girls there. We had a relationship for over a year, and that was my girlfriend. And that was the first time in that 20 years that I experienced anything like that either. You know what I mean?
Wow. So what happened to her? Did you lose? I guess once that ended, that was gone. Yeah. What happened next?
Well, what happened was. So, I always wanted to hear about stuff that they did when we talked, it's not like her and I were romantic, could go and get a room, I didn't have any money, neither did she, but, we loved each other, and they wanted to hear about places I went, whenever I went back to the earth, they wanted to hear about it. They were cooped up inside there for years, and they wanted to see sky. Everybody, all the girls there, they wanted to see some sky, and we would go to earth. We went to Diego Garcia, and we went to places in the Catarina Mountains to make cargo runs there. Sometimes we went into the Antarctic, but it was rare. But times, in the Diego Garcia, it was always tropical, it was beautiful. We'd go there at night. And so I'd always go back and explain, tell them about it. They were always jealous, whatever. And
did you disembark when you went to Diego?
Sometimes we stood on the little tarmac. There was like a big parking lot looking tarmac there, and we always were there late at night. It was always in the middle of the night because only a handful of people had security clearance for us. But we were there whenever we needed military equipment or anything. We would drop things off, and we would pick up military equipment. Sometimes we picked up uniforms and boots, a whole cargo shipment of boots. We took all kinds of stuff. there.
Wow.
There was times when we were waiting on a ship to bring things, and we would go over to Turtle Cove or Turtle Bay, something like that, and they'd let us go swimming. They out of the rear cargo bay, they would hang cargo nets down and let us climb into the water and go swimming. So because we had a couple hours, so they let us do that. We did that on another planet once, which was scary. I went swimming. It was an ocean, and we did it there at Diego Garcia. And I remember I didn't go down because I joked with everybody. They said, "Come on!" They said, "Jerry." My name was Jerry at the time. They said, "Jerry, come on, go swimming." And I said, "You guys are crazy. Those turtles are gonna bite you." It was a joke. It was pretty. That was a bigger ship with more people, with more of a better structure on it, and it was a much better existence. Those 2 years on that ship were, I don't want to say good. Believe me, there were plenty of times I cried myself to sleep, but we did have good times. We did. There was some camaraderie between us, and we made fun of our work. We were guys working in cargo. We were moving cargo boxes around in different cargo bays, and then getting them ready to load and unload. And we made fun of it. We had fun of it.
What was your girlfriend's name?
What's that?
Who was your girlfriend? What was her name?
They changed their names. It was like Trixie, and then a month later it'd be Starfire. They changed their names. They remodeled that place often. In the year and a half that I was going there, it got remodeled a couple times, completely remodeled. So that was affordable to them, for them to do that. But they changed the whole layout of the place. I remember going there and it was closed for remodeling for a couple weeks, and you go back and it was a completely different on the inside. That was like Austin.
It was like what?
Well, anyhow, what happened was that I eventually disobeyed an order and got demoted, and I lost my paycheck, and I lost the ability to travel around town. And that was probably my last 6 months there, and it was brutal because I ended up having to work a double shift and do my old job and do a more laborious job moving the boxes down below.
What was the order you disobeyed?
Well, that's kind of a long story, but it was a combat mission, and we had made a deal with a more advanced race, a trade deal, which was our mission was to trade for technology. That was what the ship did. We went all over. We went very far into the galaxy. We went all over the galaxy. Most of our missions were beyond the visible sky. Only like 1% of our missions were to a star that we could see from Earth or from Ceres. Told us that over the loudspeaker. So we went very far. And we were trying to make contact with other races, beat people from here to other races and trade them something that they needed for technology that we didn't have yet. So that was our mission. That was our mission statement, was to trade goods for tech. So we finally made a deal with an advanced race, and I believe they were the Mayans, and they were originally from Earth. They were originally from our system, so they were a breakaway group. So they never had any contact with us, and for some reason they needed something that we had. I think it was like a pharmaceutical or like a chemical that we had here on Earth. They needed some of it, so it was just faster for them to have us get it for them than for them to get it. And they agreed to trade us some technology. They were very advanced. And so when they said that over the loudspeaker, everybody cheered. The ship, we were just on cloud nine. Everybody, that was our mission. It was like a touchdown, for us, company, for our company.
Yeah.
It was kind of the buzz. And we showered them. We took more cargo to them in a month than we took to anybody else ever. I mean, I went in my area, my workstation, which was above the cargo bay, was a deck up above the cargo bay, would have cargo, would have boxes piled up. I had to walk through rows of boxes in my hallway to get to my workstation, was how much stuff we took to them. 2 or 3 runs a day for a month. And they broke off the deal and didn't give us any trade. They said that we did something wrong. They broke the deal off. And so we had to report to one of the Draco bases around Jupiter, and it's in a temporal bubble. There's a base, a space station. We had to go there and report to one of the reptiles that's basically in charge of us, that was in charge, that the Germans answered to. And the captain and the two officers went in. They let us. I walked into the station. I went in the station, and the captain and the other two officers went into the room. When the captain came out, it was like he had a complete mental breakdown. He was in tears. He was snot coming out of his nose, and he was crying. He was just totally mentally devastated. Whatever they did to him. The other guys were carrying him out, and they double timed it. We almost ran back to the ship, and they said that there were smaller. We had taken cargo shipments of smaller nukes before. There were smaller nukes that I guess that once it was fired, it turned invisible and was invisible and could go through things and go and nuke something. It was a very powerful weapon. And they said that we'd already lost enough money. We'd already lost enough goods or something. We'd already cost enough on this mission. They weren't going to give us those nukes. And so we used human-made nukes, ICBMs. And we went to Diego Garcia to pick them up. And we picked up 2 cassettes. I think there were 6 or 8 missiles on each. They were a round cassette with cruise missiles, nuclear cruise missiles. We went back to Ceres, and we had a couple days off, and the guys that worked under me were all freaked out because they all got radiation protocol booklets on what to do if you're radiation burned or you get radiation poisoning, what to do. And we were like, they were like, we're going to go and attack them, and nobody was into it. They all said that they were going to mutiny. If they do that, we're not going to do our job, And I raised a concern at the meeting. I raised my hand at the meeting that day, and they said, don't worry about it. We're probably not going to fire. We're just going to go there. It's going to be a show of force and try to get them to pay us. And there were 2 cranes in the cargo bay that I had access to. There was a light, it was a vortex, but we called it the light crane. And it was a beam of light that would make a vortex above the cargo. And it was really fun to use as a game. And everybody was certified on that one. And it basically was an anti-grav, and it would load cargo up into the cargo bay from down on the planet. You know what I mean? And in case of snow or sandstorm or something like that, it wouldn't work as well. And so we had a standard crane, and I was certified on that crane. I was the only one certified on this side of the ship. There was another guy like me on the other side of the ship. There were imagine 5 cargo bays all pointing out in 3 different directions. I had 2 going one way. He had the 2 going the other way, and there was a main one, a big one that went out the rear. The cassette that the way that they hooked up those missiles was in the cargo bay, and it was hooked to the crane. And so I didn't have the command to fire it, but once they fired it, my workstation had the buttons to press to rotate the cassette for the next ones to be fired. And we got there, and like I said, they said we probably were not even going to fire any missiles. And so we jumped somewhere. I didn't see where we jumped. And when we got there, they fired them off. First thing they did was fire 2 missiles off. And then I got the command to rotate the cassette. And it was just the worst feeling in the world. It was just the worst feeling you could imagine. Thinking that I was going to be responsible for people, tens of thousands of people possibly dying in a nuclear attack. So I did it. I did, and they shocked me. The shock collar went off, and I ended up rotating it anyway, because that's how the program worked. The mind control worked. Once you were shocked, you were kind of in a very suggestive state of mind. You know what I mean? And you went back into a hypnotized state of mind from the initial mind control.
Wow! So you disobeyed and you got busted. Wow!
So, and from that, I was immediately demoted. I no longer went to any mission briefings. I never had anything to do. I was not allowed to leave my deck area. I went to my area, my workstation. I did my job, and then when I was done with that, I had to go down into the cargo bay and physically move boxes as a punishment. And so I was working double. I was working 14-hour days, and it was kind of brutal. And that was my last 6 months, probably there. 5 or 6 months. And most people had it easier on their way out. You know, everybody knew when they were going home, you know, when their 20 years was up. And usually they threw a big to-do, you know, like not a party, but like, you know, everybody was there to see you off when you were done and, you know, give everybody. I didn't get any of that. You know, I was kind of left on a bad note. I was disgraced when I left. And so at that point, I never got to see my girlfriend again either. I never went back and saw her or said goodbye. And she was only 7 years into her time there. So she stayed another 13 years after I went home. So that was hard. You know, that was something hard to do. I didn't want to leave for that reason because I never said goodbye to her. And I was combative through the whole process of going back, through the entire regression and the memory. I was combative. I didn't want to forget her. Was what it was.
Yeah.
So I told.
Oh, I'm so glad you remembered. Yes, that it's like that bond is what it allowed you to break through. That's part of it.
It was my pride. It was my main motivation. You know what I mean? To remember. And I remember quite a bit from the process, not so much the process, but the time that I went back. And they screwed it up. They had a chronovisor during the process when they were putting me back. When I ended up back in my 9-year-old body, however that happened, I don't really know exactly how that happened. I don't know if I was chemically regressed, the same body, or if my consciousness was taken from one into a clone into another one and then put back. I don't know. There are some theories about it. I kind of believe that I was cloned. And they used my consciousness in the clone, and then that did the 20 years. And then when they put me back, they just put my consciousness back into my original body. That way, my memories would have wiped and everything, you know, because when I went from one to the other, I couldn't remember. When I was back in my body, all of a sudden I could remember my mom and dad and everything, but I had forgotten that 20 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Actually woke back up on the lunar base as a 9-year-old kid. They had a chronovisor. During that process, there was one of them that was like the taller, long-necked gray, and he was the only one that was allowed to look, and he could see probable timelines. He was looking at a chronovisor, like Andy Santiago described, and he could see probable timelines. And they asked me, "Do you remember what happened?" And I said, "I'm going to remember." They said, and they all started laughing because I had forgotten the 20 years. They said, "Do you remember where you just were?" And I said, "I was in my house. You know, you brought me from my house." They all laughed about it, and I got livid. I was a little kid, and I got mad. I said, "I'm going to remember." And then it was just a week or two before I was taken. My mom explained to me about religion. And she said, if you ask Jesus for anything, he'll give it to you. If you believe it, good, you know, enough. I said, in Jesus' name, I'm going to remember. And I was just livid. I was just like, I remember how angry I was. And the guy at the chronovisor said, guys, knock it off. He remembers now. You know, like they all had to be quiet. And then I was taken to a whole nother area, to another, like an office, like in a hospital. Like imagine being in a hospital and having to go into another area, like to the x-ray area. And I was taken, there was a gray and a reptile there, and they had to put me through to try to make me forget again, like a mind wipe, you know. And so they kind of screwed it up. They were on a timetable, because at that point they only had so much time before they had to put me back for I don't know what reason, whatever reason. And they kind of did a half job. He said it wasn't done. So whatever, I think they might have put. Who knows? There's been some debate. I've talked to researchers. They say you could have false memories put in there. They could have changed some of my memories around. They could have programmed something, or they could have done nothing and just screwed up, you know, at this point. But they made an effort. They made an effort for me to, for whatever reason, they plugged me into a computer, to an AI, and it was like trauma-based mind control again. But they didn't have a lot of time to do it, and then they put me back. When I woke up the next morning, I had the sensation of never being there for 20 years. I did. I remember it was me the next day, and I remembered the day before, but it was very distant. It felt like I hadn't been home in 20 years. The feeling of, even though I didn't remember the 20 years, you know, I was blank slated at that point. And I went down and had breakfast with my mom and dad and my sister. And I said, boy, I feel like I haven't seen you guys in a long time. My sister said, don't be stupid. You were just at dinner last night. She was like, don't be dumb. She's like, did you guys see the bright lights shining last night? You know, we had a UFO. And my dad told everybody to be quiet, you know. And my mom noticed I had a mark on the back of my neck. And my mom was freaked out. And my dad just kind of snapped at everybody, like, shut up. Don't quit talking about it, you know. And I went to school that day. And I was back in 4th grade. And I forgot. I asked the teacher where to use the bathroom. And raised my hand to use the bathroom. And she said, sure, go ahead. And I said, but where is the bathroom? And I had forgotten where it was, legitimately forgot. And I had been to school all year long. You know what I mean? It wasn't a very big school. But I legitimately didn't remember where it was. And so my teacher was freaked out by it. She called my mom, said I had amnesia. They wanted to get me checked out. I had to go to the doctor. And later on, that same boy in the class, when I went to the Wednesday meeting of our talented and gifted class, there was another boy, him and another boy were talking. He said, did that happen? He's like, apparently there was one of the boys there that was a friend of his that went on a 20 and back during the same time. And he was able to have all his memories. And they sounded like a couple of adults talking. He said, we'll talk about it later. And then he looked at me and he said, he was a lot nicer to me. He said, are you okay? I said, Tony, are you okay? I said, yeah, why? Well, I'm fine. Why? He's like, oh, I heard you had amnesia. And I said, no, I'm fine. And he said something. He was a lot nicer to me, though, at that point. And he said, you make a difference. That's what he said. He said, you're going to make a difference when you grow up. And your kids will. That's what he said. He said, you're going to make a difference. I said, what do you mean by that? And another girl was sitting there. That's the other thing. Another girl, she said, do I make a difference? He said, no. He said no to her. It kind of crushed her, you know. That was that. We didn't really talk. We kind of.
So do you think he saw your future where you're doing these?
He knew exactly what happened. Exactly what happened. Yeah. He probably had access to a report of the whole thing. You know, he knew exactly what happened.
He read your book that you don't remember writing yet that you're going to write.
That could be, yeah.
Now, this guy, is he still in your life? Is he on Facebook, or do you remember his name?
You know what? Well, there are people from Seattle, the billionaire. Like, I went back to that house. After remembering, I found the house. I found the town in Peru. Even though I can't really go there, they say it's like the Wild West. It's very dangerous for a gringo, for a person that doesn't speak Spanish, to go there. I guess it's dangerous. But so I found the house in Seattle. After I did my first interviews with Dr. Sala, I went there. I traveled to that house, and it was freaky. Seattle's a confusing town because it's hilly. There's a lot of hills, so it's easy to get lost. And once I got to that island where that house was, I knew my way around. I didn't need the map anymore. And I personally, Tony has never been there. I'd never been to the Seattle area ever. But I knew my way around. I knew the ferry to get there. I knew what ferry went where, and I drove straight to the house without mapping it. I had mapped it the night before, and I stayed in the hotel the night before, and I looked online, and I mapped my way. And when I got there to the town, I said, "No, oh wow!" And this is the way. And I took a right, and it turned out that I took the better route from memory than what I had the night before, because I went back the other way, and it was like a dirt road. So
Jerry's map was starting to come out for Tony.
Yeah. Well, those memories. Well, here's what I found was those memories that I had. You know, I expect some of my memories to be wrong. You know what I mean? Like, it was 35 years ago for me.
Sure.
Right.
And so I respect my memory. But what I found was when I visited that place, that island near Seattle, my memories were freakishly accurate. I knew my way around well. I went to the same store. She used to take us to the store when she needed something. She'd take one of the boys. And there was a store there that had candy really cheap. And it's still there. And I walked right in. I knew my way around the store. It was the weirdest sensation ever. And she used to take her car and get it worked on. That's still there. The mechanic is still there. And I drove to a beach, to a bridge with these two houses. that I remember going. You know, it was like a sightseeing thing, and it was freaky, man. I had literally years of memories, and I had never been there.
So, I don't want you to say it on air, but do you remember their names?
Yeah, I found. That's what I'm saying. Well, anyhow, that's what you originally asked about the boy. I found all these people, but there are people alive that could be affected by this. And to be honest with you, they're very powerful people, and I have a family to worry about. So I'm kind of over it. I don't have some need for revenge or hatred or anything. You know what I mean? I'm just kind of healing. You know, that's what like you said, talking about is what makes you heal from this. And that's really it's been remembering everything and talking about it. I was not the same kid the next day, and I had very deep emotional problems through my life since then that I didn't know why. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't know why. I was still heartbroken over a girl that I didn't remember. And so when I remembered everything, it was very easy to dispel a lot of it and heal myself, you know?
It sounds like you were sent back when this guy basically knew you were going to be sent back, and you know, it's just like he told you what was going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he knew what happened to me, or at least the role I had. You know, he looked at me much differently. Like I said, that day, me and him never got along before that, and then that day after I had went and came back, you know, my attitude changed. I was a changed person. I was very humble. I was a cocky, normal kid before that, and I was very humble after it. You know what I mean? I still I don't stick up for myself very much. You know what I mean? Like I lived as a slave for a long time, so I still have that. You know, that's part of me now. And so I was different, and he saw it, and I don't know if he felt bad for it or whatever, but he was a very brilliant child. I think he had already been in a 20 and back at that age, you know, like, and been able to, and not only a 20 and back, but very smart, you know, one that was very nurturing.
Yeah.
So,
something.
I was going to say something. I can't remember. Do you have a question, comment? I'll think of it. Oh.
Well, no, it's like they don't let people go. That's the whole thing that I keep getting, Tony. They don't just someone thinks they own you, and they sent you back to do something, and it's very complicated. Who's running the show? What's going on?
Well, you know what? My take on it was, while I was out there, I was being sold from one program to the other in order of usefulness. So when I qualified for the Theta thing, I was useful for that drug running thing. And when I lost my usefulness, I was sold, he was owning me. The guy owned me. And so he just kept me at his house until he found something better for me. And when I was no good at that, when they changed our pills they were giving us, and he sold me to the military. And so I went into the military and went to Mars Colony for that project. And when that failed, they sold me to Ceres Colony. They took me in for assessment and saw that I was useful for that, and I was sold to the Ceres Colony. You know what I mean? Like, I was a piece of equipment.
You're a piece of equipment.
I was treated like that. You know what I mean?
I remember what I was going to say.
What's that?
You, on another interview, talked about how their morality is different, and you forgave them because somebody said, weren't you angry? Or don't you, want revenge? And so you said something about.
Yeah, like I said, I'm kind of over the anger, and you're right. They were okay with it. You know what I mean? Like, they're in a system that is like I talked to Randy Kramer. He said, they're not like the Germans out there. They're like the Romans. It's not like a German society. It's more like a Roman society. And it's true. And it kind of hit home because that's kind of what it was like. They were okay with slavery. And and I feel that I feel that a society with slavery will eventually shoot itself in the foot. I feel ultimately, when you talk about over 1,000 years of slavery, they basically shoot themselves in the foot.
Well, this is a pretty sad view of existence. Like this human trafficking has a whole new meaning. It's going out to the galaxy, basically. And how many humans do they take for these programs? Is it thousands, millions?
Millions. It's in the millions. I've heard more than one person tell me it's in the millions.
You know, one of our people that we talked to who's been there said that a lot of them are sold to be cyborged, to have their body parts mechanized for specific jobs. Did you run into anything like that?
Exactly. Well, you think about it. I had somebody say, well, why didn't they just build a robot? You said you guys were doing hard. There were miners there. I was in that, on Ceres, there were miners. Most of the slaves were guys that worked in mines, not on ships like me. That doesn't make any sense. Why couldn't they just build a robot? And you think about it. Okay, so if there's a task for a human to do, and you can build a robot to do it, when that task is finished, that robot is no good for another assignment. You get what I mean? Like, so when the mine is done, and you need somebody to build a building now, that same human can turn around and start building a building. The robot can't.
Got it. You're like a compressor. You can be used with all kinds of other equipment.
We are a much more versatile and useful piece of equipment.
Yeah.
Any robot will ever be. No automation is ever going to be better than just having a human boots, because we can go from one task to the other quickly, much more quicker than you can build a separate robot. One's a building robot, one's a digging robot, one's a hauling robot. You can use one human for all of that. So we're still a hot commodity. You know what I mean? Labor is still a good commodity out there. And
right.
You said earlier about a sad thing of existence. Well, it is sad that one species does this to another. You know what I mean? They're trading. But Germans were doing it for technology, literally, to catch up, to get advanced. And I don't see it lasting. You know what I mean? Firstly, the galaxy is a very big place, and we traded with other less advanced societies out there. And there are many different species, and there are many species that are not into slavery. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
I didn't know how much exposure you had to the grand design of all this. It seemed like you were compartmentalized into this, and you didn't have a lot of conversations that were kind of putting the pieces together, who we are, what our rules are.
No. Yeah,
is that true? Is that my understanding?
I wasn't exposed to much of that. The German crew was, they talked about more profound things between them, but no, I didn't have access to much. And after living so long without access to information, I really didn't want it. You know what I mean? I really wasn't seeking out that. I was, kind of resigned to my lifestyle, and I just wanted to do good at what I was working at so that I would be treated better. That was basically, in a nutshell, all I really wanted to do.
So how did all this affect your life? Are you in a relationship now? And you said you have a family?
You know what's funny is, so so I was taken at 9, so I would have went from 9 until I was 29, and then sent back. Something happened. So then I lived my normal life after that. So that's how I experienced it. I lived in that order. So I was 9 and then lived that 20 years, and then went back to 9 and then lived 20 years again. And during that 20 years where there were 2 of me, I was a kind of a mess, and didn't do well in school. I was one of the top 5%. I didn't do well in school at all after that. I could never have a girlfriend. I was just emotionally not right. I had something not right about me. And literally, I woke up one day, I was 29 years old, and I woke up one day and I said, wow, it's over. And I don't know why I said it. I just kept saying it over and over. It's over. Oh, it's finally, and I felt like $1 million. I felt great all of a sudden. And it wasn't long after that I met my wife. I've been married. I've been with my wife ever since. You know what I mean? Like,
how long
it fixed something.
How long have you and your wife been together?
Since 2001, I believe.
Oh, wow. That's great.
So it was like what I'm saying is, during that 20 years when there were 2 of me, I couldn't keep a relationship. I was just a basket case. And then all of a sudden, when the other one of me was done, it fixed something. You know what I mean? Like it was just one of me. And it fixed something, you know. And I met my wife shortly after, and been with her ever since. I'm a normal guy. Went back to being normal. After remembering, I was able to sort out a lot of other things, you know, issues I've had, self-confidence stuff. After I remembered all that stuff, then I could say, oh, that's why I'm like that, you know. So it's been a
wow. Well, yeah, it has to have an effect. And so when you had the two of you simultaneously, there was bleed through.
Yeah.
Apparently. So
exactly. When one of us was traumatized, the other one would be depressed at the same time. I think that's pretty much what it was. When one of us went through something, the other one would kind of get the feelings from it for no reason. There were plenty of times I got very depressed for no reason at all, and I have to think that had something to do with it. You know what I mean? Without having proof.
Yeah. Well, we're almost at the end of the show. I want to give us. You want to say anything or summarize?
Just the most powerful thing is how you took command of your life, how you got to be from slave to being a free person. Like how did you do it? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, you have a strong center. Most people who went through that stuff, you know, other super soldiers are more destabilized. You seem to be more centered.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Well, like I said, and it has been a long time. You know, I'm 45 years old now, and you know, it's a long time. So I healed throughout it. You know, the 20 years from the original MK Ultra stuff, which really damaged me, and I still, now that I remember that stuff, I still have damage from it. You know, and I'm opening up things that I'm dealing with different problems, is what it is. I solved some problems, and now I'm dealing with different things with these memories. Mm-hmm. But during that time, I healed quite a bit. You know what I mean? By the end of my time, I was healed a lot from that initial trauma, and then went back, and through these years, I've healed as well. You know, I'm a pretty normal person. I have got a normal life going. So
okay, then
lucky, you know,
did you get paid? Did you get paid for all the work you did for these guys?
No. You know. You know, if I ever make if I do write a book and make any money off of it, I'll call that payment. I don't think they're going to.
There you go. Well, apparently you do something really great, because that adversary from your childhood recognized it. He saw it. He looked through the chronovisor. He knows what you do. So we'll hold that thought.
Who knows? We'll see. You know.
The
thing is guys like me that came up 10 years ago would probably get killed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So nowadays we're in changing times where people like me are coming out of the woodwork. There's a lot of us. I get contacted on Facebook quite a bit. I have memories, and there are a lot of.
Well, that's it. This show, Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
Awesome. Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
You need some more than speed records in this day and age. You need coverage.
Coverage? Oh, you mean them little root weevils that crawl around popping off cameras in your face?
Those root weevils write history.
Many of you know that quote by Jack Nicholson in A Few Good Men. You can't handle the truth. Well, you can, and Event Horizons will give you those truths. So when you're mad as hell and not going to take it anymore from that memorable senior network, you'll know just what to do. We will draw you in and become your news addiction at Event Horizons. Join us Monday